Thank you, Aunt Catherine. That was a very beautiful introduction. Totally did not expect that. Good morning, everybody. Okay. So I'm really grateful to be here this morning. It's been a while since I've been in Boston, but as soon as I walked into the building, all these memories flooded back. So I wanted to share this morning about a topic on cultivating our peaceful center. It's something I've been reflecting on a lot lately and just felt kind of moved to share. So I came across this quote a little while ago, and I've been mulling over it. It's from Father Moon says, "In our lives of faith, there is the communal life of faith and the individual life of faith. In the communal life of faith, it is possible to receive shared grace, but it is difficult to receive personal grace. In order to receive personal grace, we must lead a life that is close to God. Accordingly, our devout prayers and constant daily efforts to come closer to God lead to a greater depth of faith." So I came across this and I was like, oh, wow. All right, I think I got to think about this a bit. And in this quote, Father Moon's basically expressing the value of both, right? That there's a value to a communal life of faith, but there's also a value to a personal life of faith, and there is a difference. It's really incredible to be part of a community or to be part of a family, to be part of a church community, and you can support each other and grow together in a life of faith. But he's also expressing the point that there's a difference and there's an importance and there's a distinction to also developing my own personal life of faith, right? And that comes on the foundation of my own daily, constant efforts. So in my own life, I've observed that it's sometimes easy to rely on the community that I'm a part of, or my family, or the people around me to motivate me in a life of faith. Anyone relate to that? Some way? Yeah? Right? And to kind of allow this communal sense of a life of faith to be my experience of faith. And though it's supportive, and I think it's an intricate part, kind of wrestling with the value of also developing a personal life of faith. And when I think about it, I live in Philly. It's a very small church community. I've often wrestled with, oh man, I wish our church community was a little bit more inspired, or more people came, or the sermons were more relatable, or something like that, right? But realizing that our experience of a community of faith, of a growing, thriving faith community, is actually defined by each person's individual life of faith, right? So if I'm longing for and looking for a thriving, growing, supportive community of faith, then I play a really key role in that, right? And what does my life of faith look? And is it growing? Is it thriving? So then I can contribute to this larger experience. Because even if my church community was perfect, it would still be my own portion of responsibility to work on my life of faith, right? But it's not easy to do on a daily basis. I know I've often wrestled with wanting the results of a life of faith. Like, oh, I want the peace that comes with a good life of faith. Or I want the clarity, or I want my questions answered, or I want to feel God's love for me personally in my life, right? But sometimes I wrestle with putting in the effort, or the discipline, or the time to actually make that happen. If you look around us, we also live in a culture, in a society where there's a lot of distractions to a life of faith. Work, right? School, family, we have no time, and it's difficult to make this area of my life a priority. So the other day I was on a plane. I just got back from Scotland. So I was on this plane and I was reflecting, okay, it's really cool that I can, in 7 hours, be across the Atlantic from one country to another country. And I was reflecting on, does society or does technology and all the advances of our world, has that actually had an influence on my life of faith? So I kind of boil down to 3 points. One, I think we live in a culture where we want instant access and instant results. You can grab your phone and you can Google anything and instantly you can find an answer, right? Or Amazon Prime can deliver something to your door and you don't even have to leave your home. Everything is at your fingertips, right? If I want to eat something, where back in the day you had to spend hours churning butter or making bread, right? So we live in a world where everything is instantly accessible. And we also live in a world that's focused on making things exciting and action-packed, right? For a movie to be well watched or for some sort of entertainment to be appreciated, it has to be exciting and action-packed. And we also live in a culture, in a society, where we want guaranteed results or our money back, right? If I give and I invest and I put myself out there, or if I put my money out there, I want to guarantee that I'm going to get the results that I want, when I want them, how I want them, right? So I was kind of mulling this over, and I was like, okay, well, if that's the culture I've grown up in, and if that's sort of what I've come to expect about my life, has that influenced my life of faith? And I think so, because a life of faith is very different, right? Rather than instant access and instant results, a life of faith is something that has to be carefully cultivated and built and nurtured over time, right? And there are no shortcuts. I can't just push a button and dial into God or feel that sense of love and connection or have my answers, all my questions answered. And it's not always exciting, right? Or it's not always glamorous. And sometimes a life of faith is simply that daily, constant effort daily, constant effort, right? Doesn't mean that we don't have those breakthrough moments, but not necessarily every single day of our lives or every single moment of our lives. And lastly, this whole question of guaranteed results. Well, faith requires faith. Faith requires patience, and sometimes I'm going to have to invest, and those results don't materialize right away. Or I have to keep on giving and keep on trying, and do that for a long time before I see the results of my effort. So reflecting about these, it just kind of put this whole area of my own personal life of faith into perspective. So faith is cultivated in those personal, quiet moments between each and every one of us and God, right? Between me and God, where I kind of put aside the distractions of the world and focus with a sincerity and with a stillness. One of my favorite quotes, Father Moon says, "Your heart is the only place where you alone can meet God," right? So he's basically expressing that to really experience that personal, intimate life of faith, that is a quiet kind of place, right? And how to cultivate that in my life. So I need that stillness and I need that quiet, but life isn't always like that. Many times it's not, right? School, work, all these things, you can get swept up in the craziness of what goes on around us. And it makes it difficult to cultivate that space of peace. And even, the value of technology, we now can know everything that's going on in the world. The good things, the bad things, and even just in our country these days, right? Hearing things, when you turn on the news or you open the newspaper, you see it flooding your Facebook page, what's going on in Texas, what's going on in Florida, the fact that the whole state of Montana is under fire, right? All the tension that's happening in North Korea, or in the Middle East, or in Southeast Asia, right? So it's like, how, when I'm living in this world where there's so much going on, do I find the quiet and the space to cultivate my own personal life of faith? How do we do that, right? So I was in Scotland. These pictures are from Scotland. I just kind of put them up there. It is the most beautiful place I've ever been in my life. I went with two of my friends, and we spent it on this little island called the Isle of Skye, just off of Scotland. And it was 9 days of camping in the rain, because it rained the entire time. And we had no Wi-Fi, and it was just a very simple life, eating out of our car, just very simple life. And I was reminded of how important and how valuable it is to unplug and to recharge. Especially in nature. Isle of Skye is like sparsely populated. There are more sheep than there are people. And the whole countryside is just beautiful. And instantly, I'd gone through crazy weeks of work and school and family stuff. And I felt, nature, when you're in nature, I don't know if you've experienced this, but if I'm stressed out or if I'm anxious or if I'm angry or if I'm whatever I'm feeling, nature never reflects that back, right? It always reflects back peace and balance and kind of like a surrender. I've never felt that the trees are anxious or angry or frustrated, right? And I realized when I was in Scotland, this was the first time in a week and a half that I hadn't, or in years, maybe months, that I went for a week and a half without touching a computer. Or without having a phone with Wi-Fi, right? And access to everything else. And so we're just tenting, camping, And every evening spending time like reflecting, praying, studying, and kind of taking this me space in this little tent, right, in the dark. And thinking about, like what Anne Catherine was sharing in the video, also like not divorcing myself from what was going on in the world, but taking some time to really reflect, asking, connecting to what was going on in Korea, and asking also, reflecting how in my own life can I support what's going on. So it was my reminder to kind of ask myself, if I want to make a difference and I want to make an impact in this world, I have to be someone who has a calm and peaceful center, where I'm cultivating a life of faith that grounds me, that gives me strength, that gives me courage, that gives me clarity, so that no matter what's going on around me, in my family, in my relationships, in my work, in my school, that I'm making a commitment to myself to feel on a daily basis God's love for me, right? That peace, that energy, that belief, that guidance, and that direction. So that it can transcend the challenges that I might be facing, or transcend the stress and the tension, the worry that comes from living in this modern age. Father Moon really loved nature, and I feel like he spent a lot of time fishing and a lot of time in nature as a child, but also throughout his entire life. And I feel like this really was a reflection of him seeing and understanding the value of taking this time on a regular basis. So this is a quote from his autobiography. He said, "Spending time in the forest cleanses the mind. The sound of leaves rustling in the wind, the sound of wind blowing through the reeds, the sound of frogs croaking in the ponds. All you can hear are the sounds of nature. No extraneous thoughts enter the mind. If you empty your mind and receive nature into your entire being, there is no separation between you and nature. Nature comes into you, and you become completely one with nature. In the moment that the boundary between you and nature disappears, you feel a profound sense of joy. Then nature becomes you, and you become nature. I've always treasured such experiences in my life. Even now, I close my eyes and enter in a state in which I am one with nature. Some refer to this as a not mine or not self. But to me, it is more than that, because nature enters and settles into the place that has been made empty." Okay? So, and often in reading this passage, I've also reread it and replaced nature with God, right? If I can empty myself, or if I can find that quiet and that stillness in my day-to-day life, then that's when I feel and experience God most clearly. Because wanting peace in the world, or wanting peace in my family or my community, starts with me, right? Starts with my own daily life. And I've experienced, if I'm go, like every single day, wake up and don't take this time, then it's so easy for things to be bottled up or kind of stuffed down, and I'm not aware of what I'm actually going through. And I miss the things that I need to work on. I miss the things that God is trying to teach me. And oftentimes it's easy to focus on all the things outside of me that need to change, right? And if only this changed, or if this were different, then my life would be better. I don't know if anyone can resonate with that thought, right? So it takes a lot of courage to actually carve out this time for myself, right? To be quiet enough that I'm aware of what's going on inside of me. And sometimes that's a little scary, because it's like, if I really give myself that quiet space, what am I going to find? Right? What am I going to discover that I'm wrestling with? So I know I had a habit for much of my life, especially in my relationship with my family, of like expecting and wanting other people to change, rather than making that effort to discipline and to cultivate the sense of self-awareness, and realize that the change that I wanted to see around me had to start with me. And even a large part of doing and being involved in young adult ministry is, for a long time there was this frustration of, why isn't our movement doing more? Or why doesn't something exist for young adults? Or why isn't anybody taking care of us and empowering and supporting us? And kind of switching this mentality from, either Tasnah, I can point fingers and complain or wait for something to change, or I can be a part of making that change happen. Right, so I'm the only one who can make that change in my life. I'm the only one who can work on my life of faith. No one else can do that for me. So in faith traditions, there's often this focus or this emphasis on the daily practices of life, personal practices of a life of faith. Because when it comes down to it, the core of a life of faith is our own personal relationship with our Heavenly Parent, right? And with any relationship, there are things that I have to do to make that relationship grow. If I want a relationship with my heavenly parent, I can't just sit on the couch and wait for something to happen, right? So it takes time, and it takes investment, and it takes a daily effort. And so there's certain building blocks of a life of faith that have really helped me over the last few years. And I've seen the impact that they've made. A few years ago, I'd gone through STF in college, and I never really wrestled with my faith or questioned it. But there were certain crossroads that I came to. My blessing didn't work out, and when Father passed away, and things with our movement were really going through a lot of tough times. Really came to this crossroads of what do I believe in? Right? And where do I want to move forward with my life, and what do I want to create? And realizing that no one could answer those questions for me, and no one could navigate that journey for me. I had to do it. And I had to put the time and the effort and the investment in it to experience what I really longed to be able to experience in a life of faith. So 4 ones I just wanted to touch on today. One is prayer. So, why is prayer valuable? I feel it's one of the most personal ways that we can build this parent-child relationship. Only God can tell me why I'm here, right? Only God can really help me to understand my purpose. Why did you create me? What are the strengths and the gifts and the talents? At the same time, what are the things I got to work on? What are the things I have to wrestle with? And some of the biggest questions that we ask, or some of the biggest crossroads that we come to, only in that process of prayer and seeking out, ask and you shall find, seek, right? Knock, the door will be open to you. So that's really been, prayer is a huge bedrock for a life of faith. And second is studying God's words. I feel as a parent, God's not just going to toss us out into the world and be like, good luck, hope you make it. Right? But there's going to be a blueprint, and there's going to be a map. How do I get from where I am to where I want to go? How do I navigate the challenges that are part of this process of growing and creating a family and becoming the person that I know God created me to be? But it's my task, right, to study that. It's my task to seek to understand. It's my task to embody and to practice. So even if the wealth of knowledge and the wealth of wisdom is sitting on my bookshelf, if I don't interact with it, if I don't engage with it, there's a limit to what God can do to help and guide and direct my life. Huh? And thirdly, reflection. We experience a lot on a day-to-day basis, and I think one of the beautiful things about being human is that we can step back and we can objectively look at our life, right? How are things going? What have I done? What were the results? What were the impacts? What do I want to do differently moving forward? But there's a difference between being wise and being knowledgeable, right? I can know a lot of things. I can have studied intellectually a lot of things, but true wisdom comes from experiencing something, right? But I can have a lot of experiences and not walk away with very much wisdom. So what's the difference? It's this process of internalizing, right? Taking that time to reflect on what happened to me, how I responded in this conversation with my mom. How did I react to something that somebody said? Why did I respond that way? What do I want to do differently in my relationships and with the people around me? And I think having that chance or that space to reflect on a consistent basis, we see the lessons God's teaching us, and we also see the ways that He's encouraging us to grow and to take small steps forward. Lastly, setting good conditions, right? We know that in order for God to work in our life or for Satan to work in our life, we've got to do something. God can't just invade our life, right? There's a portion of responsibility that each and every one of us has. So I have to ask myself on a daily basis, what am I doing that God can really work in my life? A way for me to reach me or to guide me or to support me or to help me. Am I carving out that space where I can even listen to the voice inside of me? So, good conditions. I can pray, I can study, I can reflect all I want, but if I don't serve people, if I don't love my neighbor, none of it really matters, right? None of it really counts. So how do I, in my daily life, take the opportunity to serve, to care for people, to do something outside of myself? And secondly, one that's been a really crucial part in my own life is the habit of reporting. I know growing up, I always felt like I had to be perfect and everything had to be good and I had to show my best front. And if anyone knew what I was really going through, they would love me less. They would judge me. they, would push me away. And so growing up, I had this habit of kind of bottling everything up and keeping it inside. And only in the last few years really cultivating this habit of finding mentors and people that I trusted to share the things that I was really going through. And I could experience and feel how much God can work through the people around us to help us and to guide us. And if we shed light on those things that we're wrestling with, there's a way to be able to move forward. And also a good condition of surrounding myself with people that are moving in the same direction that I'm moving in, friends of faith, right? When two people are walking in the same direction, you can support each other. And finding people in my life where I don't feel awkward to talk about God or awkward to talk about your parents or this desire to grow in a life of faith. So those are some of the things that have helped me. And one of Father also in his autobiography says, any task we do requires sincerity and dedication, not just for a day or two. It needs to be a continuous process. A knife used once and never sharpened turns dull. The same is true with sincerity and dedication. We need to continue our efforts on a daily basis with the thought that we are sharpening our blade daily. Whatever the task, if we continue the effort in this way, we eventually reach a mystical state. So basically this idea that we can't just, have that one good prayer once 4 years ago, or, have that one experience a couple weeks ago. And I remember feeling that way after finishing STF. Oh, I did my time, this foundation's gonna be good for the rest of my life, and that, obviously didn't prove true. So I think, how do I invest into these things on a daily basis so that there's a life and there's an energy and there's a growth behind them? Most inspiring thing for me as a kid is when my parents share something that they had realized in reflection or study that day. Not 40 years ago, right, when they were on MFT, but that day. Or when I have conversations with friends where there's a demonstration that it's alive and it's real and it's a recent realizations and breakthroughs and growth, right? And I think we want that too for our lives, that it's something that we're experiencing on a regular and consistent basis. Right? And so if we want to become people that God can really work through and love through and make a difference and an impact in this world, it starts with how do I cultivate that relationship myself first, right? Can I feel that love on a daily basis so I can give that love on a daily basis? Can I feel that peace and that confidence and that belief on a daily basis so I can extend that on a daily basis? So if we want to see change in our families and our communities, it starts with me, right? And yet at the same time, it's definitely a wrestling, right? It's a wrestling to commit to yourself, to commit to this area of growth. No one, people notice if you don't bring home money, or people notice if you're not living in a house, or people notice the external things, right? But no one can measure my internal life of faith. No one can look at me and know, when was the last time you felt God's love for you? Are you clear? Are you working on yourself? No one can see those things, right? But doesn't mean that they're not important and that they're not a foundation and a bedrock for all the things I want to grow and develop in my life. So even though I know these things, or I can understand the value of them, I've experienced the wrestling to commit to those things. So taking time, each morning in the last few years, gotten a lot better at this, but taking time each morning before I even leave my room and enter the flurry of my brothers and sisters and morning preparations, to take time for me, right? To say a prayer, to read something, to reflect. And I can feel and I can see the difference in my life, experience the clarity that comes from that, experience the peace that comes from that, and the guidance that comes from that, especially when navigating and wrestling some of the challenges that we find coming our way. So I know that I can't go to Scotland every month, even though I wish I could. And I can't take a week and a half off to just frolic through the fields. But I've experienced the value of that time and that space. And there's this really beautiful park near my house. And so how can I, on a consistent basis, take the time to honor my soul, right? To nurture, to work on my own spiritual life, trusting that when I do, I can contribute to the lives of faith of those around me, right? And knowing that if there's a vitality and there's a life that I'm experiencing, people are also going to be drawn to that. And that's a platform for me to be able to share, right? So in concluding, I invite you to take some time this week, maybe even committing to a whole hour where you leave your phone behind and you go to a park or some place where it's just quiet and peaceful, and give yourself that time to see it as a gift to you, right? And or taking some time every morning before you start your day to even just a simple 5 minutes to carve out that time for quiet and peace, reflection, study, and cultivating this own center. And I think if we cultivate a center that's quiet and peaceful and rejuvenating, then no matter what goes on around us, no matter what no matter what changes around us, this center is mine, and I take it with me wherever I go. So whether my family is having a tough time, or whether my community, or whether the world is going through so many things right now, right? This is what I can control, and this is what I can invest into, and this is what I can cultivate and create. And imagine the kind of faith community we could create if each and every one of us commits in our own small way to creating that and to experiencing that in our daily lives. I know that's the kind of community I would love to be a part of and to co-create together. So those are just some of my reflections, and I felt wanted to share this morning. So please join me in prayer. Good morning, Heavenly Parent. Thank you so much for this opportunity to be here in Boston. Place with so much history with all these brothers and sisters in this family. And on a Sunday morning, in the midst of our busy schedules and work and family and all the things that our hearts might be wrestling with, or the things that we're working through, things we're trying to find courage to navigate and to find the answers to. And I'm grateful that we can come together as a faith community, and that we can make this small commitment to cultivate and continue to work on our own personal relationships with you, trusting as a parent, that's what you're longing for more than anything, is that each and every one of us in our own personal lives can feel your love, can feel your guidance, can feel your hand in our life. And sometimes that means we have to carve out the space for that voice inside of us, that quiet voice, to be heard, to push away the distractions, or to push away all the things that we're worried about or anxious about, to have the space in our lives to connect to you, to connect our hearts with you, with your love. And so I pray that we can have the courage to do that, and the hope to do that, and the trust that if we make that time, that we'll be able to feel you and to connect with you, so we can be people that you can that can be a channel for you to love through, to work through, and to make an impact and a difference in the world around us. So I thank you for this morning, and we're grateful and honored for the chance to share here. And I offer this prayer in my name, Tasnah, Moyer, out of hands and voices, Moyer, Bust, and Central Family, Aju.